Daniel Snyder, the owner for now of the Washington Commanders, continuing to face congressional pressure over the investigation conducted by Beth Wilkinson, the 10-month probe that has been kept entirely secret by the league and by the team. It got ugly last week. It got awkward last week. The league sending a letter to Congress accusing the team of defying repeated orders to make documents available that could then be given to Congress to satisfy Congress. And yesterday was the deadline for producing the materials, and a subpoena is next. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I just think that Daniel Snyder at this point is doing everything he can to delay the inevitable. I've said all along, I think they are hiding something massive. The harder they try to keep all of this information secret, the more it has convinced me that they are keeping something under wraps that is going to be major. And I've done some reporting about the Beth Wilkinson investigation, the fact she didn't write a report. If she had written a report, it would have concluded with a recommendation that Snyder be forced to sell. There's something big that is being hidden by the owners, not to help Dan Snyder per se, but to help themselves avoid a similar jackpot in the future of their own making, potentially. But they don't want to be in a spot like this, and it's all developing a feel now, Shireen, that it's crumbling. But Dan Snyder is still doing everything he can to hold on for as long as possible, and that's what he'll do. If they come after him and they try to push him out, he will sue, and he will fight, and he will drag it out as long as he possibly can. He's not giving this team up voluntarily. It will be the proverbial, they'll have to pry it from his cold, dead hands to get that team out of his clutches, or after all legal appeals have been pursued and exhausted. But he is not going to give this team up without a major fight.
Yeah, and you think back to the Jerry Richardson case and how quickly that he was forced to sell, and he obviously didn't fight it. But when you look back at that, you're like, why does Daniel Snyder still own this team? And to me, it's reminiscent of the Ray Rice case in which the league made a decision on the punishment for Ray Rice, and it obviously was premature, and it obviously was the wrong punishment. And this feels like that from the standpoint of they delivered their punishment and it wasn't strong enough. And I do think this is crumbling and going to continue to crumble. And I don't see how Dan Snyder, Mike, with Congress and everything else involved, I don't see how he holds on to this team. Is there any possible way, any outlet he has legally or elsewhere that he can hold on to Washington if they say nope?
Well, you mentioned Jerry Richardson, and I think the difference was significant. The moment that the problem arose for Jerry Richardson in December of 2017, he decided to hand it over. He decided that he's out. He didn't want the fight.
Yeah.
He didn't want the ugliness. He didn't want the vote, the legal battle, anything else. He was happy to sell and move on. I think, and we're going to talk about Stephen Ross in a second, I think Ross, if he feels the wall's closing in, will do the same thing. Snyder is just not giving it up. And the difference is Richardson was not going to bequeath the team to anyone when he died. So let's just go ahead and cash it out. Let's do it now. It's either me now or my estate after I die that's going to sell this team. Daniel Snyder is determined to give the team to his kids. Determined. It's why he's been fighting as hard as he has. It's why he bought out his 3 limited partners who were trying to sell their interests and couldn't find anyone to buy it because people didn't want to be business partners with Daniel Snyder. So he's going to do everything he can to hold on to this team. This is his legacy. This is the thing that he's going to hand to his kids. It just feels like the walls really are closing in. And the key is the Tiffany Johnson allegations, because she wasn't part of the initial Wilkinson investigation. Now the league is going to investigate it. If they get Beth Wilkinson to come back and do this supplemental investigation, I think it's over. I think it's done, because she already knows who she's dealing with in Daniel Snyder, and she's going to view anything he says about Tiffany Johnson's claims the same way she has viewed and concluded and assessed his position on other claims. And I think she's come to the conclusion that he's not credible. That's what I believe. That's what I think she would have said if she was actually asked to put anything in writing. So he doesn't want her coming back. And it may not matter. They may go find somebody else. Whoever they find, once they look at it, they're going to realize, once they do their work, that Tiffany Johnston, I think they'll conclude, tells a compelling, credible case for what happened to her. And, Daniel Snyder huffs and puffs and blusters, potentially. And they decide that that Tiffany Johnston's telling the truth, and that will be the straw, I think, that gets the owners to initiate the process of forcing him to sell. And the longer he can hold on, the more he's going to get for the team. That's the other reality. If he can drag this out 2 or 3 years, the value is going to keep going up and up. The worth of the team is going to keep climbing and climbing. And that may be another reason for him to try to fight it as long as he possibly can. And I also think he's wired to like this stuff. When I practiced law, there were certain lawyers who enjoyed the fight so much they never turned it off, regardless of who they were dealing with. Their partners in their firms, their colleagues, their family members. That was the way they always went about life. It was constant friction and turmoil, fight with everyone. I feel like that's the way Snyder is. He just wants to fight with everyone, that he enjoys being able to fight with anyone and everyone that happens to be in his field of vision.
So, Mike, take me through, because you're the lawyer and you know all this stuff, the Congress subpoena. Like, what are we going to find out in this subpoena? Like, is this going to reveal everything potentially?
Well, what happens is we have to deal with these claims of privilege. And that's how they set up the original Beth Wilkinson investigation. It wasn't commissioned as a Deflategate-style effort to get to the truth and make the truth known publicly. It was an effort to circle the wagons and protect the company, the team, and the league against liability. So some of the communications between Beth Wilkinson and Daniel Snyder, and then communications between Snyder and maybe the commissioner, and that was the subject of the common interest agreement we learned about 11 days ago, it complicates things, and it allows the team and the league to claim that certain materials are privileged. Now, in a normal court setting, if one side says we have materials we're not going to turn over because they're subject to the attorney-client privilege, if the other side says we don't think they are, at some point the judge looks at the materials and decides yes or no, up or down, these are protected or they're not protected. I don't know enough about the congressional process to know who would be the equivalent of the judge to decide what is or what isn't privileged. But I don't think you can just slam the door. Eventually, it would go to court. Eventually, there will be a judge. You're issued a subpoena. You produce documents that you claim aren't privileged, and you're withholding others. If that's not good enough for Congress, there has to be some mechanism that would be initiated to enforce the subpoena. You're in violation of the congressional subpoena. We're going to go to court. And the question becomes, how far does Congress want to push this? Because from Congress's perspective, their attitude is, we shouldn't have to do this. We've got the ultimate power to get what we want. Why are you making us use it? And making them use it only pisses them off more. That's what Daniel Snyder doesn't realize.
Well, and Mike, how messy is this for the NFL? Between this and the Brian Flores lawsuit, I don't know if the NFL has ever faced anything like this, two things all at once that just make them look terrible. Just absolutely terrible. This is a complete mess. I was at the commissioner's press conference last week, and it was awful. I mean, that's all the questions were about, and rightfully so. Those should have been the questions.
There was one that wasn't about those. No. Well, no, it was one that I'm thinking of particularly. There was one where my name was mentioned, which left my wife horrified. Yeah.
There was that.
Yeah. But you're right, Shireen. You've got controversies involving two teams that could force sales of two teams. 2 of 32 franchises could change hands because of these controversies. That's unprecedented. To have 2 of these pots boiling over at the same time, it's unbelievable. And it's something that we're going to continue to follow. And I know people have been very interested in the Washington case for months. And they'll ask me, why aren't you saying more about this? Why aren't you saying more about this? It's driven by developments. We just can't stand here every show or sit, as the case may be, and say, release the documents. Having some tangible development gives us the opportunity to cover it and then conclude by saying, please, we said please, release the documents.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.